I just joined Megadeth. Nick wasn't working out. He came back, wasn't working out. So Dave said, hey, what about Shawn? I said, well, okay. When I called Shawn the one night to ask him to join while we're in rehearsals, and they said, hey, you sitting down?
Hey, Glenn. How's it going? It's Brandon calling.
Good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Yep. Sounds great. So when I do these, I like to start at the beginning of you as a musician and then work our way up to the new record. So starting from the beginning, where did you grow up and how did you get started in music?
I grew up in a small town outside of Montreal in Canada called Two Mountains, very small little town. You know, at the time in the 70s, it was basically getting into music was, well, for me, it was guitar was clear from an early age. For me, it was, that was the instrument I wanted to tackle, wanted to try to learn how to play. So, you know, by, I think about 8 or 9 is when my oldest brother had an acoustic guitar lying around. He used to play at the time. And, you know, I used to ask him to show me a couple little things because I was getting tired of, you know, strumming the tennis racket along with my Kiss albums. So I wanted to go to the next step, you know? So he showed me a couple little pieces, you know, Smoke of the Water, as everybody starts with, and stuff like that. And it just progressed from there. Got into Sabbath when I was about 11. That was a big leap forward because that's where I started to learn how to play full songs from my records. You know, before it was just little bits and pieces, you know, and other people in the town, kids my age, you know, that were wanting to learn how to play the guitar. They learned. We all kind of swap what we knew, you know, type of thing. And that's the way it was back then. There was no school, you know, there was no internet. So it was basically what you learn from, you know, your friends and what you can pick up by ear on your albums. But by 11 is when it really started to, it was a major jump there because I was able to start with my old Sabbath records.
Did you take any lessons or go to school for it, anything like that?
No, because like I said, there wasn't any back then in the late 70s. There was no schools around that anybody had. There's nothing. So, like I said, I grew up in a small town. It's all by ear and what you learn from other people.
Now, the first band I'm aware of you doing is Eidolon with Shawn. Was that your first band, or did you play in any others before Eidolon?
Well, I was the first that's where we started to get into more professional recordings, trying to get some decent recordings and maybe sign to a shrapnel label or something like that. That was, you know, doing instrumental guitar-based music, which was in the mid-90s. Yeah, early to mid-90s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it started, yeah.
Now, how did you go? So you obviously, you know, like you said, started from a small town, formed Eidolon. How did you come into contact with King Diamond?
John, and actually in the earlier part of the 90s when we were doing the Eidolon stuff, which started as instrumental. If you know the history of the band, it started off as an instrumental kind of project and then, you know, morphed into, you know, we got a vocalist and few vocalists along the way.
I know Nightmare World. Is it Nightmare World?
Yeah.
Whatever the 2000 album's called. I'm drawing a blank on the name.
Mm-hmm. That was the original singer, but yeah. But the King Diamond thing was Shawn had, you know, since the beginning of King Diamond after Merciful Fate had disbanded, and there was 2 guitar players just like Fate had, and Andy had been there from the beginning, still there to this day. And you know, but they were going through a few guitar players from the beginning. You know, there was about a good 3 or 4 changes, you know, within about a 5-year span. And Shawn was like, why don't you just do a video playing a few of the songs? Cause I love to play along with the albums. I was really, influenced, very inspired by that stuff, you know, and whatever other records I had. I'm a street player, and that's how I grew up, like playing to albums that I had and expanding from there. And just, we all get into this because you're inspired by what you hear. So as a singer who's inspired by Robert Plant, he's going to try to cop some stuff here and there. But hopefully at the end of the day, he makes, you know, his own,
sure,
you know, footprints. But we all, you know, we're all inspired to do this kind of thing from somewhere. And, for me, it was bands like that. And, Shawn was like, why don't you just do a video and, you know, play a couple of songs, maybe a solo and send it to him. And I'm like, at first I was, well, you know, we're across the pond. Probably, you know, they're going to end up getting somebody closer to them. I was quite far away from where they were at the time. But I decided, okay, well, all right, I'll give it a go. I have nothing to lose. And I sent a video to their booking agency. Make a long story short, wound up in his lap. Got a hold of him. He was very, very nice. He liked the video and said, we have somebody in place right now, but if something comes up, I'll give you a call. And I remained in contact. We became friends through a few years. Like, I think that was around 92-ish. I'm talking 91, 92.
Oh, okay. So you had submitted it that early.
I'm trying to make this story brief because it's a long one. So I sent it to him. And like I said, around 91, 92. So that's when we first started talking. And then by late 97, there was an opening there, and he called me and joined the band and did the tour for the album that they had just finished with the previous guitar player called Voodoo, and went from there.
That's crazy. Now, tell me about the recording of House of God with Cole Marshall. I've got to say, I mean, one of the most surprising things I learned doing research for this, I had no idea that King Diamond lived in Texas.
Right.
Which I always, think of them as Denmark, right? So I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he's in Texas.
Yeah, that's where he's originally from. He's Danish. So, part of the band was Danish, part Swedish mix. And now we have a couple, I think 1 or 2 U.S. guys in the band. Is that true? Yeah. A bass player and the drummer, I think, are U.S. based, and got Andy from Sweden, and King is Danish. But anyway, and Mike Wheatus from Sweden as well. So, cool. I haven't talked to that guy in years. Great guy. From what I remember, we're going back a few years. 23 to be exact. Is that true? Yes, 2000. Wow. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. It was a really fun and easy process for me because I think I had, a pretty good feel for what they were doing, and I was able to fit into that style wise because I understood it, what they were doing. And I think that helped fit in a lot more. I just remember the process. Andy did all the rhythms on that guitar, I believe, on that album, all the rhythm guitars. And for solos, I had my spots that they picked out, and I went in and, at the hotel, typically I would work on 2 or 3 songs, and the next day I'd go in and record those solos and so on, and so forth until my solos were done. I think it took me a few days or something like that to complete the album's recording for me doing my solos. And it was just a really cool atmosphere. My brother flew in from Atlanta just for fun. And, I just first met King and Andy and all that. And, you met them prior on the previous tour. That's right. But I came in just to hang out and just have some fun. So it was a fun and cool atmosphere. And, of course I learned a lot from it, cause everybody has their own procedures for recording and all that kind of stuff. And, so it was a lot of fun.
That's really cool. So after King Diamond, to sort of bridge the two bands, you did a guest solo with Pagan's Mind. How did you come into contact with Nils and Pagan's Mind, and how did he eventually come to join Eidolon?
Simple. A friend of mine who used to work for a magazine in Toronto called Brave Words, a metal magazine, and we were friends, and, he was like myself, always looking for new bands, and he found Pagan's Mind. I believe it was the second album. And I just loved it. And I loved the singer. I was like, this guy is awesome. Not only is he just great technically, he's got a great voice, great feel, just an all around great singer. And one of my favorites, actually, for that style of singing. I just got in contact with him on I can't remember at the time. Of course, we're going way back. It might have been MySpace.
Yeah.
Who knows? But we're going back a few years because we did that Eidolon album in 2004. I think we started, and we spent a couple of years because we were touring with Megadeth. So, with Nils, yes. So I got in contact with him. I knew he was a King Diamond and Merciful Fate fan. And I just initially just wanted to reach out and, hey, I used to play with that band and really liked, the latest Pagan's Mind, yada, yada. At some point, yeah, he asked me to do I think doing a remix of that first album, maybe. I think it was a remix they did. And he wanted me to do a guest solo along with Gus G and maybe someone else. I can't remember. But I know it was me and Gus G on one track for sure. And after that, yeah, the Eidolon thing, we parted ways with the singer that we had at the time. We went through a few. And I think initially we were going to do another project with him, but then we were having problems with our singer. So I thought, okay, we're going to get rid of this guy. And then we're going to and I'll ask Nils if he wants to join this band because we've already have a few albums out. It's established. Let's get, and we were still striving to get the proper singer for the band. We had some issues along the way, not such great luck in that department. Until we found Nils. Unfortunately, that was the only album we did because, everything changed, by when I joined Megadeth and Shawn's, turned everything upside down. So at the end of the day, that became our last album, and which is fine because nobody could pronounce the name. Always hated that name, but anyway, yeah, that's basically how it came about. When we were starting that album, we signed a new deal at the time, and around 2004, early 2004 or something like that. We had the deal. We had the songs prepared, and Shawn flew to Andy LaRock's studio in Sweden to record the drums. While he was there, that's when I got the gig.
Oh, wow.
So that was really just a very exciting time. He's there recording drums for the album that we're getting ready to do. I just joined Megadeth. So it was a very exciting time. He came home. He wound up in the band because, Nick wasn't working out. He came back, wasn't working out. So Dave said, "Hey, what about Shawn?" I said, "Well, okay." And the famous line when I called Shawn the one night to ask him to join while we're in rehearsals, and they said, "Hey, you sitting down?"
No kidding, right?
And then he literally flew out the next morning.
So just to step back for a sec, so how did you come to join Megadeth? Because you joined on the tour for System Has Failed, right. Correct?
So basically I was referred by someone who I'd met years prior, who was in contact with their webmaster, and I was referred for the gig, basically. And then he said, "Hey, I put your name in," because Dave's wanting to put a version of the band back together and do a farewell tour. And he said, "I put your name in. Wouldn't it be cool if you joined the band?" I said, "Yeah, okay." I was thinking, that's not going to happen. And within a few days, I was in the band, literally. It was that fast. That was it.
Wow.
I got Shawn in because we started rehearsals. We did about 2.5 weeks because it was a new band. And the tour was following that 2.5 week period immediately after. And Nick wasn't working out. Shawn came in, and he had to learn 18 songs, I think, in 6 days, and fit in with the band. And we played our first show in Reno, and it went great. And, the power of determination, and being inspired and motivated from that whole situation. Looking back, it's kind of crazy that he was able to accomplish that in 6 days, but he did, with the help of everybody. So.
Well, Megadeth, it's not Dream Theater, but it's not easy to drum either, to learn. It's not 18 AC/DC songs. They're a bit more complex than that.
No, he hadn't really been playing. Well, he just, came off of playing, and he had a little bit of warming up, when he did the drum tracks for our album, but primarily he was, he's construction. So I pulled him out of that and came into the band, but he quickly got into shape real fast. And it was like, again, he was, we came in, he was nervous, and as I was, but I did my homework times 10. So I was ready. So when he came, he said, "It's okay. Don't worry. It's going to be fine." I know, because Shawn's like a sponge. Once he gets something, you don't have to worry about it. I don't even have to look at him, and we've had that chemistry since we were kids. So that tightness that me and Shawn have formed as brothers was brought into the band, which helped a lot. We had a good lineup there.
Yeah, well, and then too, having James on bass, utterly phenomenal bass player too. So
yeah, well, it started off with Jimmy McDonough, and that was short-lived. He did a decent job, but James was more, he fit the band better in all ways, with all due respect to Jimmy. But it was great. Yeah, that was a great lineup, and we had a lot of fun, and everybody got along real well. Everybody was chill. So it was just a really good atmosphere, and we had a lot of fun, seeing the world multiple times with my brother and Willie G, my tech, who's a great friend for many, many years. And
it's fantastic. I could probably grill you about the Megadeth stuff for another hour. I know we're, running up on time. But I do want to ask you this, though. So around the time you left Megadeth, you recorded a song that I think is probably my most played thing you've done to date. You guys did a cover of my favorite Max Webster song, In Context of the Moon, with Terry Watkinson on keyboards. Right. Tell me about doing this cover and how it came together.
Yeah, that stuff. Cool. That was cool, because we're huge Max Webster fans, and have been since we were kids, buying the albums when they came out. I just dated myself. And we just had this idea, for a cover song. And I thought, hey, I don't know who the moron was, because if you're going to, that's definitely probably one of the harder songs to play, to record, play, whatever. We just decided to tackle it, whatever crazy reason. And then I can't remember how I got in touch with him. I might have seen, because he's an artist too, that you may know.
Yeah, he does medical paintings.
Right. Really good. He's created a lot of, you look at his work, a lot of cool atmosphere in a lot of his paintings. But anyway, I think I just reached out that way and found his phone number or something, I think I just called him. Literally, I just found him somehow in Canada 411. I can't remember. But he lived in downtown Toronto. Probably still does, I'm not sure. And I asked him, I said, "Do you have any of that old equipment where we can obtain those tones that you used, on the original recording?" And I went and picked him up in Toronto. I lived in Mississauga, and I brought him back to my house where I had the basement studio. He came in and, had a beer and did the song within, I don't know, a half hour. It was like really fast. It was cool. And he liked what we, at that point, I had already recorded all the rhythms. The bass was done. Of course, the drums were there. The foundation was there. I didn't have all my solos, but I had some, and which he liked. He liked the version that we did. So that was cool. And, there's some parts in there where you have unison things going on between the guitar and the keyboards. And I got him to do those. I said, I have no idea what the hell you guys are doing. So he did it, and he kind of showed me a few little things, and then I worked out the rest of it on my own by ear. So what you're hearing is that's just me learning all that stuff by ear and following his keyboard lines, you know, in those sections where I think there's just the one middle section where there's a unison lines between the keyboards and the guitar. And it was not easy to do. But the outcome, when I listened to it now, and it wasn't too long ago I heard it, I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out. So what happened was the singer that we had at the time who sang that album, Apostle Defiance, was the last album we did with him. That was about 2003. He couldn't sing the Max Webster song. He just didn't have that he couldn't catch the taste. And so Shawn sang it. It was actually kind of funny because he flew to my house, you know, that studio at the time, from Atlanta. And, you know, kooky Canadians, I had a fog machine. So I decided to just flood the whole place where you couldn't even see anything. You know, it was just like, we're so stupid.
It's a way to create a vibe, though.
You had to be there. It was it was definitely a vibe. We're definitely seemed like we're on the moon, that's for sure. But, it was just a kooky little thing we did, but it was, you had to be there. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, he did the vocals.
That's crazy. Wow. I never knew that. Yeah. It sounds enough like Nils when he's not singing high. Like it's.
Well, yeah, but it's not, like I said, that's a different record. That was a different lineup.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, really quick, speaking of the Kim Mitchell connection in a way, you used his longtime drummer, Chris Southerland, for your instrumental album, Metalusion.
Right.
Tell me about, you worked with Jim from Saga on keyboards. Tell me about doing that record.
That was great. I just wanted to, after I left Megadeth, shortly after, I was like, I just want to do, if I just do one instrumental album, I want to do one that counts. Me and Shawn had done demos in the early 90s with the Eidolon stuff. But it was never really good recordings. It was 4-track, you know, cassette, which was okay. We did the best what we could at the time, but they were primarily demos. And at this point where I had, you know, I was into Pro Tools and I was able to record, you know, professional sounding productions, I wanted to do a proper instrumental album. And so I started seeking out musicians. Chris, I knew him because, I don't know, I think I contacted him online. Around the time we did the cover for In Context of the Moon, I think I was trying to get it to Kim or something so he can hear it. Because I knew there wasn't a lot of bands that have covered Max Webster. As a matter of fact, I can't even think of one, which is unfortunate.
It's funny, since you did that cover, there's a band from England called Universal Juveniles, and they're actually a full-on Max Webster tribute.
Really? Okay.
And have recorded a record and did their own original song that sounds like Max Webster. It's really cool.
From England, because there was a Max Webster tribute in Toronto, and the guy kind of looked like Kim and sounded like. You're not thinking about them, are you?
No. They're from the UK. I'd have to look them up now, but I've got the record. It's quite good.
Okay, so let me see if I can finish off what you were asking me.
So how you got Chris Southerland and Jim and all the rest?
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, right. So basically, I reached out to him, and he liked the version, played it for Kim. That's how I met Kim too. Because he had heard it, and I spoke to him, and he really liked the version of it, and then they did a concert. I think it was a New Year's Eve show. Following that, that's where I first met him, me and Shawn, and so to this day, you know, we became friends. Really nice guy, and that's how I got to meet Kim and Chris. It was through that song, I believe. Yeah, just reaching out to seeing if I could. I might have reached out to Chris, seeing if I could, because he was easier to find contact info for. It might have been. That's a long time ago, I'm guessing, but I think that's probably what would have happened. So, yeah, he's great. He wrote a lot of material, as I did. Paul, the bass player, killer bass player. Paul Yee is his name. I think he's from Edmonton. Can't remember. Or Winnipeg. But anyway, we worked really well together. Chris, yeah, great drummer. You know, on a personal level, unfortunately, it didn't work out with him so well, Chris. But we did a really good album, which I'm very proud of. Still to this day, I really like it. It was since picked up by a different record label, and they re-released it, I think, last year on CD and blue vinyl.
Oh, cool. Yeah, for me, I remember when it came out, and I sort of put it on in the background and was listening to it, and all of a sudden, as a huge Al Di Meola fan, I heard Egyptian Danza come on. I'm like, what? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, that was
a nice surprise.
Right. When I first talked to Chris, was the first guy I talked to about doing this kind of thing, and he was into it, and he said, hey, you know what? I've been doing a little bit of touring with Saga, and Jim's a great keyboard player. I said, I know, he's a great keyboard player. So that's how he came into the band. And then Paul was also he was a friend of Chris's, and I guess they lived somewhat close to each other, and that's how he wound up. So Chris got those guys in, and introduced me to them. And to this day, I still talk to Jim and we still do stuff. We'll do another instrumental album, but not yet. We're working on other things right now, but at some point down the line, we probably will do a second one. And it'll be called something different. I didn't want to call it Glen Drover. The record company wanted that because I was just at a Megadeth.
Sure.
They just wanted to have that angle. But, it really should have been called Metalusion as far as I'm concerned, because everybody, except for Chris, as far in terms of writing, everybody was involved aside from the covers. Egyptian Danza was picked because I wanted to see how good these guys were. If you're not going to find out how good they are if you're playing something real simple and, passive. So it's just like, it was a good indication of maybe the direction I wanted to go in with some of the stuff. Kind of like jazz, rock, meets this, meets that. It is a mixed bowl of different things. There's a few things in the salad there. And, that was the first track we recorded. And because it came out so well, we decided to use that on the album. And I thought, hey, let's do maybe another one. And then we ended up doing 2 Jean-Luc Ponty tracks. I picked 2 because I couldn't make up my mind which one I wanted. We ended up doing both. They were both turned out killer. I couldn't decide which one to use, so I decided to use both. And then we did a little Frank Zappa medley. And then the rest were original. So it's half and half, really. Half instrumental, half covers. But I think that luckily we were able to take those covers and our originals and fit them together so everything is cohesive with the production, I believe, as well. Because like this album that we're going to get into, the Withering Scorn stuff, that album and the last album I did, The Walls of Blood, which featured multiple singers, was, long distance collaboration project, whatever you want to call it. Drums were done in Winnipeg. Bass was done in Winnipeg. Keyboards were done in Toronto. I recorded all my stuff in my old house in Mississauga at the time. We're going back 10 years at least. And yeah, same thing with, that's what we've been doing as of late. That was probably the first album. Yeah,
I was going to say your Walls of Blood. I mean, the new album, the new Withering Scorn, Prophets of Demise. It pretty much seems to, at least from on paper, it looks like it sort of was born from the Walls of Blood. That to me felt kind of like a project or like a compilation or something like that. Of a bunch of different songs and things. I know you had an Eidolon song and some other stuff. And then Withering Scorn seems like you took Henning, who sang most of that record, and said, okay, let's do a proper band out of it. Do I have that correct? Or?
Well, I mean, it's certainly the work that I did with Henning and Joe, it stems from that to a certain degree. Just to clarify, the Walls of Blood album was supposed to be an album, 10 songs, 10 different singers. That was the concept. Picking singers that I really liked that I never got to work with. Here's a chance for me to just do something different. Shawn was still in Megadeth, so I was kind of on my own. And I thought once I moved to where I'm at now, near Windsor, Ontario, I decided to do this. And what ended up happening at the end, because a couple of singers didn't work out, Henning sang, I think, 2 or 3 tracks on the album, and then the rest are different singers. Todd from Queensryche, and Nils is on there. Chuck Billy is on there. Dude from Stryker, all that stuff. So that's what, and then Joe played on there as well. I just contacted him at this point. I think just to ask him if he wanted to play a track or 2 on the album, because I can't remember who did the majority of the bass. I'd have to look. But anyway, he came in and played, I think, 1 or 2 songs. So that was the beginning of our friendship and being able to, hey, this guy's got a setup at home. He's able to do this kind of thing. Maybe we could take this a step further. I might have been thinking that in the back of my mind. So then brings us to the present with the Withering Scorn stuff. Well, we started 3 years ago. Worked on it periodically over the last 3 years plus. And it really kind of came from maybe a little bit of that in the pandemic. Because me and Shawn were like, okay, what are we going to do? Everybody's going to be recording now. Once we got into the pandemic thing and realized what the hell was going on and what we were looking at, what we were faced with. That's really where it kind of came. Yeah, because Henning, we've already done some work together. He was a no-brainer. Love him. Always have. And Joe, same thing. Always loved his bass playing. Huge Fates Warning fan since the very first. I've been following those guys since the very first album came out. And I have a vivid memory of buying the cassette in the store in 1984. So that's how long I've been.
Wow.
So I've been religiously following them since the very, very beginning.
That's really cool. But by the way, as a huge Fates Warning fan, I don't know if you've read their new book, but if you're a diehard, it's a must read.
I have it. It's great. Yeah, it's a great book. I got it. Oh yeah. I actually haven't finished it yet. I've had it for a while. I'm kind of savoring it a little bit.
It's funny. I did the same thing. I got to about FWX and went, I don't want this to end. And I put it down and haven't finished it.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? It's like there's no other one. So it's like I've been kind of purposely savoring it, reading a chapter at a time here and there, But anyway, so this, of course, all brings us to the present, which with the new band Withering Scorn. Like I was saying, when me and Shawn started talking about this around the pandemic, the early stages of the pandemic, Joe and Henning were obvious targets and just a no-brainer. You know, I knew they would work. There was no, well, we should maybe try out a song or two and see how it goes. And it was easy. Me and Shawn just did what we always do, which is writing together. Shawn will come up with stuff and I'll feed off him, or vice versa. This is the first project band. I think we would call it more of a band, I think, at this point, but first band that we've had together in actually quite a few years. He helped me on the Walls of Blood thing, but it was really my thing, that album. And then prior to that, it was all Megadeth. So it's quite a few years since we had actually done an album together, regardless of us always being in each other's back pocket for whatever's going on at the time. We always help each other out. So, and it came together that easy. And we spent the better part of maybe 3 years plus, periodically when we could work on, not everybody could, life gets in the way sometimes. So there was no rush. We wanted to make sure we were going to make an album that we were very happy with, and which we are. I wouldn't change anything on it. I love the whole album. It's a great first record. I think in every way it's cohesive in terms of style, production. I think everybody is definitely on par and on the same level musically. So the performances I think are all there, and I'm very, very happy with all that. I'm very, very picky, so it takes a lot to impress me. But it came out really, really well. Just really happy that we have this opportunity. We signed a 4-album deal with Frontiers Records, and this is our first of the 4. The album was released on what date? What did it come out? Was that
I think it was the 7th, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Friday the 7th. Yeah, of this month. Wow, the summer's just flying by here.
So did Henning do a lot of did you sort of give him vocals to sing to, that kind of thing? Or did he do a lot of writing vocally and lyrically?
Lyrically, no. Shawn, he likes, we've done a little, we've worked together a little bit before. Again, Walls of Blood was one of those, because Shawn wrote, that's right, I forgot. Shawn did write actually a few songs on that album lyrically. So I forgot about that. Not so much musically. He helped me on that, but a lot of the lyrics I believe are his, except for maybe, I can't remember top of my head. Todd, I think, wrote his own lyrics, but, without trying to get into detail with that, it was Shawn's lyrics, which he likes. He likes the style of writing. And for the most part, I think it was Henning's melodies. I think Shawn might have helped a little bit here and there. He might have had an idea, and then Henning might have just kind of fed off that. I can't really remember. But they work together, and even to a certain point, probably the lyrics too. But I think initially Shawn writes the lyrics, and Henning does everything else. He's great with melodies. He's a great singer. He's a great guy. We're having fun because we're all, we all get along. There's no drama. We've gone through all that. We just want to have a fun, easy atmosphere of creating music, and that's what we got. So very happy about that. Probably rephrase that. Not drama, but it's not always easy when you're working with a group of people and trying to be all on the same page and, in every way. It's not an easy thing to do, but I loved all the bands I worked with, to be honest. But this just really came together real easy, and we get along real well, and it's just very natural. So very happy.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Got to say, really, really dug the record. Any favorites? Any favorite songs from the record that stand out to you? Obviously, it's like trying to pick your favorite child or whatever, right? But
yeah, I think probably, the Ancient Desire, the Dark Reflections, the very last song. I like all of them, to be honest with you. There's not one song I dislike. I've heard this story before, I'm sure, but it's true. We had a lot of time to absorb the album and grow with it to make sure that this song's turned out really well, and then later on you decide, maybe I don't like it quite as much as I thought I would. But yeah, at the end of the day, that was the beauty of the good thing about having spent that much time on the recording, is that you have some time to grow with it, either in a good way or not so good. And all the songs that we recorded, I think that was one more song that we ditched for whatever reason, but all the songs pretty much that we had written and recorded are on the album.
Yep. And at the point you just go, no, we're happy with this. Everything works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are there plans for you to do any touring with this band? I know obviously everyone being busy with different things. Do you guys think you'll get together to do some shows?
Oh, I'm sure. But at this point, the album just came out. So there hasn't been any talk about that yet. I anticipate some possible festivals. That would be nice overseas at some point. But we're just new, even if we didn't do anything for a couple of albums, I'm fine. We're trying to make some footprints here with the new album that just came out.